Hello, everybody, and welcome to Calls. This is the 2022 Shriners Hospital Initial Research Show. I hope you joined in with me on the success this weekend. If you don't follow me on social media, you should hopefully do that, as I picked the winner this past weekend in Sam Burns. At the favorite, as the favorite at 14-1, it was pretty good value. You don't often see golf tournament favorites at 14-1. And if you watched the show last week, you know that he was basically my number one pick all week. He's been stellar lately, approach, putting, and he didn't even have a good putting week, and he still won the tournament this week. So a great week for me, sports betting wise, or sports book wise, I should say. Hit the winner, Sam Burns. I hit Tagala, top 20. Nick Hardy was up there and then kind of blew up today. Aaron Wise, I had a win ticket on him, and while he fell off today, he was certainly in the running at the beginning of the day. So pretty successful week for me sportsbook wise. And then DFS was very successful. I used a lot of Sam Burns. Aaron Wise were pretty chalky. Nick Hardy, Taylor Moore, I was on these guys, and they were pretty darn successful, being Corn Ferry Tour guys. So again, I hope you joined in the success that I had this week. It was a lot of fun this weekend, to be quite honest. But as we move on to the Shriners, just a reminder, as I said earlier, my social media links are in the description below the video. Make sure to follow me there, as that's where I post my betting cards, and you can get a hold of me if you want any tips or what angles that I'm looking at, bounce off ideas, so on and so forth. As always, chat is open. Let me know how you did this weekend, either sportsbook betting wise or in DFS contests. Did you have Sam Burns? Did you have to fade some chalk? Hopefully you faded some Charlie Hoffman. He was good early in the week and then kind of faded off towards the weekend. But let me know in chat. And then, as always, what do you want to see tonight? I've got a little bit more than than usual planned tonight. So hopefully we can get into some more in-depth research tonight, as I have a couple of interesting things for you all. And then lastly, all statistics provided by fantasynational.com. Again, it's helped me pick quite a few winners in the past 5 months or so. I can't recommend it enough. So without any further delay, let's begin our research for the 2022 Shriners Hospital Open. And we transition over here, to the tournament fact sheet. Again, as always, it's not up as the time of this show, but this is last year's, and we'll begin the data dive tomorrow looking at this year's to make sure there's no big changes or anything to that effect. But we are in Las Vegas, Nevada, Sin City, at TPC Summerlin. This is a par 71 at just over 7,200 yards, so it's a pretty darn short course. It is a Bobby Weed design, and I believe that Fuzzy Zeller was a consultant on the design of the golf course. So obviously with Fantasy National, no statistics for Bobby Weed as a course designer, so we're not going to be able to apply any filters there. But TPC Summerlin has hosted this event for quite a while, so nothing new there. I always like seeing the stimp meter reading, so it's a reading at 11.5. Certainly not as fast as we were in Jackson, Mississippi this past week. If you watched any of the tournament, you will know that those greens were pretty lightning fast. I'd be surprised if Fantasy National didn't classify that as lightning next year. So these will be fast, but not like this past week. And then course statistic wise, these are very, very large greens. 7,400 square feet, where the tour average is about 6,000. So extremely large greens. So you're going to see some skewed data in regards to greens and regulation, some putting statistics, because most of the time guys are just a little bit further away, which again applies into proximity and such. So when you look at some other pundits this week, make sure you keep in mind the green and regulation percentage if they're just using that as a baseline, knowing that these greens are bigger than the tour average. So you want to make sure again that you're parsing that data, and hopefully the pundits that you're looking at along with me know that these greens are bigger in size, and so you're going to want guys that are either better at distance putting or just have their proximity dialed in and so on. But large greens this week, quite a few bunkers, and 4 holes with water in play. And there were a couple of comparison courses that I was looking through, and that is the kind of added information that I have planned for you all tonight. I saw a couple of comp courses that I think will tie in pretty well to help give us a head start into what we're looking for this week. Greens are bent grass, so we're moving off the Bermuda from the generally southern style courses, southern United States courses, and going back to bent grass. But the key here is the rough. It's Bermuda again. So if you watched any of the tournament, you will know that the Bermuda rough was pretty hard to play out of this past week. Being in the fairway was a pretty key factor, because Bermuda rough is so hard to judge. Some guys would expect flyers or jumpers, and they would come up a club and a half short, or guys around the green just weren't able to control the spin and the speed of their chips. So hitting out of Bermuda can be pretty difficult at times, at least Bermuda rough. So we're going to definitely take a look at some around the green numbers, especially in the data dive tomorrow, from this past tournament in Jackson, and see who played around the green pretty well. Maybe that can lead them lead some information or some insight into this week. Another thing that should be known for a fall event, this is a very stacked field. This is a huge popularity field. You've got a lot of the big names: Brooks Koepka, Patrick Reed, Paul Casey, Ricky Fowler. A lot of the big names are playing this week. So as opposed to the Sanderson Farms that we just left, where it wasn't an alternate field event, that's not what I'm getting at, but you didn't have a lot of the big name players there. This is the exact opposite this week. You'll still have the Korn Ferry Tour graduates for sure, but this is a bit more of an invitational style field. It's not a complete invitational, but you certainly have a lot of the big names playing this week. So also keep that in mind. But that's the tournament fact sheet for the Shriners. Again, the main thing, it's a pretty short course for a par 71. Fast greens, but not lightning. Large greens, a little bit of water, rough, Bermuda rough, and it's going to be short. It's short rough, and we'll see what. Sorry, I got distracted there. It's starting to rain. What kind of effect the short rough has? But we're gonna get off of that. We're gonna come back to Fantasy National, and again, as I did last week, I've reduced the time frame for all the rounds to the last 6 months, and you'll see some of the names here. You'll have quite a few Ryder Cuppers. You got Victor Hovland, Harris English, Scotty Scheffler, Paul Casey, even though he wasn't on the Ryder Cup, Patrick Reed, you got Poulter. So this is a big event And in the past 6 months, and haven't filtered for the number of rounds or anything to that effect, your number one strokes gained player is Louis Oosthuizen. Abraham Ancer, Victor Hovland, Hoffman, and Seamus Power are your top 5. Sam Burns, which I don't think this is counting today's round. I could be wrong, but I don't think this is counting today's round. Sam Burns, 6. Harris English, Scotty Scheffler, Paul Casey, and Patrick Reed. Your defending champion is Martin Laird. And he has not been playing very well lately. As you can see, he's 85th strokes gained total in the past 6 months. But he is your defending champion at minus 23, which that number should immediately tell you a lot about the course. It is easy. It is very easy. 1 second as I make sure chat is up. And again, if you're live with me here, jump in chat. Would love the interaction. Want to know how you all did this week and so on. But there's a quick look at the strokes gained total overall. We're not going to do a whole lot of filtering here yet. So let's take a quick look at the course breakdown here. As I mentioned, we're in Las Vegas at TPC Summerlin. You have quite a few eagleable holes here. You got the par 5s, which are, especially, number 16 here, plays to a full half stroke under par. If you're not making your birdies, you're losing to the field, and, a 5% eagle rate is, fairly common. So you'll see a lot of eagles. But you have this drivable par 4 here that lends itself to eagles. This other par 5 plays pretty darn easy. So you get 3 of the top 4 holes here are the par 5s, so that should tell you got to take advantage of the par 5s. But again, another drivable par 4, that's something we might want to look at in guys that play those holes fairly well. But again, you'll see a lot of green here. It's a pretty easy course. We'll move down to the average strokes gained by type or by shot type. No surprise, as it is with most events on tour, strokes gained approach is your biggest indicator. Putting second, off the tee and around the green, in some combination lower than those two. We're back to what I would call a standard type layout or distribution of statistics here, where approach is higher than the putting. If you'll remember, one of the key things for the Sanderson Farms and the Country Club of Jackson was that putting was so astronomically important. So we really narrowed in on guys who were putting well, especially on fast Bermuda. Here, because of the greens being larger than normal, you're really going to want to get your proximity guys, your guys strokes gained approach, and so on. Because if you're scrambling for pars, it's not going to be a good week for you. You really have to, be, having birdie putts and such. By average strokes gained by par of hole, like most tour events, the par 5s are going to be the most important. Par 4s and then par 3s. Nothing too crazy there. As usual, par 5s. You just got to take advantage of them, especially here at TPC Summerlin. You saw that the 3 par 5s here on the course yield about at least a 2% eagle rate, up to a 5% eagle rate. That's a lot of eagles. Hole composition wise, again, a plurality of holes. The par 4s falling between 400 and 450. We'll see if that has any bearing on who we want to focus on, or how much that takes into account. If you finish high on the leaderboard. I looked very briefly, and there was a fairly strong correlation, but I didn't dig into it because I actually kind of went down the rabbit hole of the comparison courses. So we'll take a look at that a lot tomorrow, especially. But you can see here, 9 of the 11 par 4s fall between 400 and 500, with a majority on the shorter end of that. Approach shot distribution, I discussed this last week, where this can be a bit misleading. You would think that perhaps you would want to focus on guys who hit their, who have the closest proximity but in these ranges, since the majority of the approach shots come from there. That's not always the case. Sometimes it is. That's not always the case. It's just the fact that the course lends itself to those types of shots being hit. And especially since they are technically considered approach shots, some guys don't have to hit these very well in this range here to succeed. So you really have to make sure that you really that you see that strong correlation from the top of the leaderboard to the range of proximities that you're seeing that a lot of approach shots are coming from. But having said that, we'll take a look at the in between the 100 and 150. We might look at 200 plus. I doubt it's going to come into play because of some graphs here we'll look at in just a second. Like I said, we'll take a look. I don't know how much it's going to be a factor in our rankings. You'll see here the historic cut line. For a while it was at -3, then it gradually got tougher. There was one year where it spiked in 2018 where the winner was -9. That is a complete outlier for this tournament. I don't know if if the course just got away from the greenskeepers or the superintendents and such, whether the wind was a factor. This was just a complete outlier. At -9 to being the winner, +2 being the cut, because you can see it started to come back normalized. -2 the next year, -4. Last year was -6. That is, I believe that's the lowest I have seen a cut line in these graphs. I'm sure there's been others in other years and other tournaments and such that have been that low, but -6 is astronomically low. That is extremely easy. That's a pro coming out to a to a public course and playing that. So we're definitely going to be looking at easy courses again, like we have been the past couple of weeks with the Sanderson Farms, a lot of the Sanderson Farms, and then a little bit less so at the Fortinet. But that's backed up here. The easiness is backed up here. You've got 23% birdies versus 12.5% bogeys, so almost double the amount of birdies to bogeys. You do have a little bit of doubles, and this bar isn't invisible. You've got some eagles here, but just take a look at the amount of birdies versus bogeys. That'll tell you how easy this course is. When I was talking about on the tournament fact sheet how the short rough will come into play, this is going to be one of the key indicators why. You'll notice that driving accuracy here is really darn low, especially compared to the average tour event. So that would indicate that one of two things: either these fairways are undulating, they're sloping, guys are these are just extremely difficult fairways to hit, or guys don't care. They just try to hit it as far as they can. And I'm going to tell you now, it's the latter by a long shot. They are trying to hit it as far as they can, get it as close to the hole as they can, and then make putts. So that's why you will see a lot of these approach shots come here, and that's why I definitely don't want to put a lot of stock into this unless it's a straight correlation of who's at the top of the leaderboards, because guys just don't care. They're going to hit it far, especially because these greens are so big. You see the green and regulation percentage here. It's quite skewed. 65.5 for the average tour event, 72.5 here. Quite skewed, bigger greens. So if guys know that these are bigger greens, generally speaking, they can just hit it further, not have to worry as much about the rough, and then plan on trying to make a putt or whatnot. And again, scrambling a lot lower here. Kind of around the same thing around the green plate. I don't know how much that's going to really come into effect with the greens being bigger, and if you're scrambling anyway, you're losing ground on the field. 3 putts per round, just because the greens are so big, you'll see a few 3 putts. To be honest with you, I don't know if that's going to be a major factor and something that we want to consider. Who avoids 3 putts, but because of the greens, that explains why there's a few here. But when I mentioned that guys just try to hit it as far as they can and they don't care about the fairway, you can tell here. Average drive of 296 yards here at TPC Summerlin versus 282 on the regular tour event. Guys just bomb. They just bomb knowing that this course is easy. They're going to have to hit birdies, so they're just trying to hit it as far as they can. So we're definitely going to be wanting to look at driving distance absolutely this week. Absolutely. And the last thing for the course breakdown, you'll see green and regulation proximity, 31 feet here, 28 3/4 on the average tour event. That's speaking again to the large greens here at TPC Summerlin. So again, don't be persuaded by any regular green and regulation stats. Make sure that they're informing you, whoever you're listening to or getting your advice from, that they are aware that these are really big greens. But that's a look at the course breakdown, and there were 2 courses that I thought kind of played into this course, like I mentioned in the intro. And the first is the Golf Club of Houston. And this is the tournament fact sheet from Houston in 2020, part of that super season. Now, it's a par 70. It's a long course at par 70. But the average green size is big, with 7,000 square feet. You've got 4 holes with water in play, the same amount as here at TPC Summerlin. There's quite a less number of bunkers. So there's more bunkers at Summerlin. While the greens are Bermuda, you also have the rough that's Bermuda, and it's only cut 1/4 of an inch higher. So this is pretty short rough here at the Houston Open. And of course, it's not a Don Ross or Pete Dye, Jack Nicklaus design. This one I thought was going to be good because of the average green size, the amount of water in play, and then the rough being Bermuda. We don't want to take a lot of putting statistics from the Houston Open because it's Bermuda. But again, I thought the rough and the greens were going to be, or the green sizes, I shouldn't say the green sizes would be a decent indicator for the Shriners. And then the second one is the Charles Schwab at Colonial, again in Texas. And this is last year's tournament fact sheet for it. Now, another thing to, in the differences between Houston, Golf Club of Houston and Colonial, this is only a par 70, but very similar in yardage, 72.09 and 72.55 at TPC Summerlin. So only about 40 yards of difference. Now, these are smaller greens for sure, but again, number of water hazards, 6 holes with water in play. So you still have that element of trouble lurking if you're wayward, either off the tee or on your approach shots. But here you've got the greens being bent grass, and then rough is Bermuda as well, and it's cut a little bit higher. But I thought those 2 were fairly good comparison courses, at least by these tournament fact sheets, especially this Colonial Club, the Charles Schwab. So with that, I'm going to close those 2 out, but I went ahead, actually, I'm sorry, I'm going to leave them up. This is for the past 4 years, I guess, from 1/1/17 to now, at the Golf Club of Houston. So this is the Houston Open. Here's the strokes gained total for these, of the guys that are in the field this week. And you don't need to, pause the video, make notes or anything. I actually put this into an Excel spreadsheet for you all to kind of look at the end of the show. At the end of this show, and we'll kind of do some comparisons here. But this will give you an idea of who generally plays the Houston Open well. Sung Kang is actually number one, and this was way back in 2017 when he just lit a fire the first two rounds. So, how much do you want to take from 2017? I don't know. I went all the way back to 2017 just to make sure I had enough rounds, 12, to make it at least somewhat relevant, I guess is the word I'm going to use. Certainly you could argue to make it the last 8. I wanted more than 4. I wanted more than just one tournament of data. I decided to go with 3, and that's back to 2017. Quite honestly, I would probably limit it to 8, but I'm here now, and we're just going to look at all the way back to 2017. But Sung Kang is number 1 strokes gained total. You got Russell Henley, Ricky Fowler, Ian Poulter, and Luke List are your top 5 of players that are the top of the strokes gained total at the Houston Open. So again, remember, the Houston Open, we're looking at the size of the greens, the short rough, the water in play, so on and so forth. So a lot of it is the green size and the rough. So kind of want to look at proximity at the Houston Open. Kind of want to see around the green numbers at the Houston Open. So there's that. And then for the Charles Schwab, remember we are looking at, this is a pretty darn good setup for yardage. The greens, again, the number of holes with water in play. So this was more of the putting and say off the tee type stuff. And this is for the Charles Schwab, again, trying to keep it consistent, going back to the same time frame, beginning of 2017. Here are your top 10. You got Kevin Na, Brooks Koepka, Brian Harman, Emiliano Grillo, and Jonas Blixt are your top 5 from the Charles Schwab. And then Connors, Hoffman, Kisner, Kokrak, and Chesson Hadley are your top 10. So immediately, right off the bat, there was a little bit of overlap here. Grillo is, tied for second, essentially, at the Charles Schwab. He is 7th, tied for 7th, at the Houston Open. So this, Emiliano Grillo is one player that has played the 2 comparison courses very well. So we'll have to see if that holds up here at TPC Summerlin. And again, I just wanted to bring this kind of stuff up. I went ahead and brought the entirety of this sheet over to Microsoft Excel. So we'll take a look at that at the end. I just wanted to show you the reasoning, the thought process behind bringing in all these stats into an Excel spreadsheet. Again, Houston for the approach and the around the green, Charles Schwab being off the tee and putting. Let's take a look at the historic conditions that have been at TPC Summerlin. Last year, it's been first off, you can tell it's been bent for as long as you can see, and scoring relative to par, easy. And again, 2018 was an outlier. It was average to difficult. For some reason that year, it looks like the greens had really firmed up. So maybe they had, hadn't gotten a lot of rain, or, maybe this was intentional, I don't know, but the greens were really, really firm that year when traditionally they've just been average firmness. Hitting the fairways, this is the last year that it was considered difficult to hit the fairway. 2019, 2020, and 2021 has been, average to easy almost, and then there was one round where it was considered difficult. But another reason why, and I usually don't highlight the length of the rough, but short and average makes a lot of sense. If guys aren't afraid of the rough, they're just going to try to hit it far, knowing that the rough isn't too much different than the fairway. So I really highlighted that when I rarely look at rough length. Makes a lot of sense here. But again, hitting fairways used to be difficult. Now it's on the easier side. The course has always played this 7,200 to 7,400. I imagine it's been on the very low end of that, considering the fact sheet is 7,200 or a little bit above it. And then in 2020, it actually played very short. So there's a look at the historic conditions. Obviously, we're going to look at bent. We're absolutely going to look at easy to par rounds, easy to par tournaments, because scoring goes really low here. I'm not sure how much we're going to look at hitting the fairways, especially since guys are just trying to hit it far. So again, I'm going to focus at least initially on driving distance, and then we'll see in the data dive tomorrow how much that really plays. Rough length short. We're going to look at fast bent greens. These are traditionally fast. I'm probably going to do a little bit of short course stuff here too, knowing how close it is to that 7,200 cutoff here at Fantasy National. Probably going to look at some short course statistics as well. But there's a look at the historic tournament conditions here at TPC Summerlin. Now let's look at, of the guys in the field, who has played this course well. And over the past 5 years, Webb Simpson's the #1 strokes gained total. And you can see he's got a lot of success here, but it's intriguing because when you think, guys are just trying to hit it far, you don't think of Webb. I don't think Webb gets enough credit for how good he is on long courses. No, he is not the longest hitter. But his irons are that good. His putting's generally that good. And he's a world-class player. And you can't ignore the results here, especially he's played this event 5 straight years. He has 4 straight top 20s. And even in 2017, a tie for 31st isn't, horrible. So very good numbers for Webb. Lucas Glover, in the 3 years he has played this, has been no worse than top 10. So very, very strong outings for Lucas Glover. As I mentioned, Martin Laird is your defending champion. He's got some pretty mediocre results other than that. Chesson Hadley, good results. Now missed the cut last year. I'm willing to give that more of an asterisk, an outlier. Just 2020 and 2021 was just strange for obvious reasons. So I'm willing to give him more of a pass on that, especially considering he has had such good success here in previous years. Pat Perez, a little bit of the same, a 3rd and a tied for 7th, and then missed the cut last year. Someone who's Jekyll and Hyde, Abraham Answer, 2 top 5s and then 2 missed cuts. Wolf has played well when he's been here. Kind of going on down the line. Let's look for Griot, because he played the 2 comp courses very well. He's a little bit on the positive, certainly not astronomical. He's only played this event 2 years, missed the cut in 2020, fairly mediocre in 2021 or last year. So we'll dig into that tomorrow at the data dive, see what's going on with him at the Shriners. But he's certainly positive in the strokes gained. So that's something to, that's at least positive, or that's good. What's the word I'm looking for? It's backing up the course comparisons that I was making with Golf Club of Houston and Colonial. On the other end of the spectrum, let's see who just doesn't play this course very well. Nick Watney, who tied for 2nd this past week at CC Jackson for whatever reason. He's had 1 good year and missed the cut the other 4. Martin Trainer, 0 for 3. Jimmy Walker, 0 for 3. Charlie Hoffman, which is surprising, and I'll get to why it's surprising, when we get to the Excel spreadsheet. He's had 1 very good year here in 2018. This tied for 74th. Yes, he made the cut, but I imagine he was negative in the strokes gained, even though he made the cut. probably, either fell apart or, probably made the cut on the number and then fell apart on the weekend. You've got Rory Sabatini's 3 for 4 and a very middling, good, made cut at there. Jim Herman 0 for 2, K.H. Lee 0 for 3, Keith Mitchell 0 for 3. So here's a look at the guys that generally just don't play this course very well for whatever reason. So I'm going to resort that by strokes gained total in case we want to come back to that as I look at the Excel spreadsheet. But the last thing I want to look at here mainly at Fantasy National is the leaderboards from last year. And again, we saw this at the tournament conditions. The scoring relative to par, always easy, or pretty much always easy here. Hitting the fairways has been anywhere from easy to average. You had one round last year where it was difficult. I'm more looking at this being easy to average. It hasn't been difficult to hit these fairways in 4 years. So, and again, I don't think fairways are just going to be that big of a deal because guys are just trying to hit it far. So last year, your winner was Martin Laird in a 3-way playoff with Austin Cook and Matthew Wolff at minus 23. I mean, a huge, discrepancy of easy. It's just easy. Answer at 20, Zalatoris, Malnati, Hahn, Cantlay, Siwoo, Desham. So on down the line. Sung Jae, who played fairly well this week. Harold Varner, who played well this week. There's Webb. Again, we mentioned how Webb plays this course very well. Tringali, who had a pretty poor Sunday but had a good week overall at Sanderson Farms. So that is a look at the leaderboard from last year. Let's look at some specifics. You can see here, tee to green, pretty fairly obvious. Off the tee, you'll see here that the off the tee isn't really the big factor for tee to green success. It's the approach. 6.5, 5, 6.1, even this negative 0.6. That's barely under field average, but a lot of these numbers are just astronomically high there. You've got a middling one at Cantlay, but he was putting the daylights out. Siwoo Kim, he wasn't very good with his irons, but for whatever reason he was making putts. He was very good around the green, and that led to his high finish. It's very rare that you see somebody this bad with their irons be at the top of the leaderboard unless this number is very high, and this number isn't very high. So somehow Siwoo chipped his way around to this high finish. But you see here some more high approach shot strokes gained. Putting, pretty darn important. -1, -0.2. What's this? -2.2, and that's at 17th. I mean, he's tied for 13th, but yeah. So you've got a lot of high putting numbers here as well for the kind of the overhead strokes gained. Digging in a little bit further, here's where I want to look here. The driving distance, and this is a bit surprising considering I thought distance was going to be very important. It looks like it's not really that big of a factor. Martin Laird was slightly above average. Cook was slightly above average. Same with Matthew Wolff. But you have guys that were under. Malnati, Answer, James Hahn. Siwoo was almost field average for 4 rounds. Of course, Bryson's going to beat everybody almost. Wyndham Clark was long. Neiman was long. But it's really the driving distance isn't that big of a deal. This kind of plays out fairways wise. I didn't think fairways would be really all that important. You do have Sung Jae here that looks like he probably led the field in fairways. Yeah. But I don't see a lot of strong correlation here either. It looks like perhaps these greens in regulation, which doesn't make a lot of sense because these greens are so much bigger than all the others. But other than Siwoo, and again, that's probably attributed to his lack of good approach play that week where he was having to scramble to get around the green. It looks like greens in regulation are kind of the thing to look at, which which surprises me, to be honest. We might have to take a look at. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do that right now. Let's look at 2020 fairways and greens. Yeah, driving distance again isn't really not that big of a factor. It's the greens. Greens here are, and there's a lot. I mean, these are high numbers of greens in regulation. I mean, look here: 4th, 2nd, 9th, 3rd, 4th, 4th, 7th, 9th, 9th. That's a lot. I'm gonna look at one more year, 2019, at fairways and greens. Yeah. So again, distance isn't the biggest thing. It's these greens in regulation. You got Danny Lee led it at 41st, 2nd, 15th, 1st, 7th. This is a little bit less of a strong correlation, but it's still fairly strong. So that's surprising for me. That really is. But you can't argue with the numbers there. Let's look at par 3 efficiency real quick. I don't see a lot here. There were no par 3s that played short. No strong indicators for the top of the leaderboard, either strokes gained par 3 or the lengths. So not a big factor to me, at least last year. And again, in the data dive, we might look at past years just to see, but I'm just kind of getting a general idea here. Par 4s are pretty darn important, as you can see here. And then there's the range, the 400 to 450. And it looks like that could be fairly darn important. At least it was last year. And do a little bit the 450 to 500. A little bit. Yeah. 4th, 5th, 8th. 2nd here. Martin Laird was 1st, 5th, 8th, 8th at gaining 2. Okay. Let's see this here. Yeah, Gligic, 27th, so 4th, 19th, 2nd, 13th, 8th, 5th. So it looks like perhaps both of these par 4 ranges are pretty important. Then you sort by just strokes gained par 4, 4th, 2nd, 5th, 2nd, 5th, 19th, 13th, 19th, 13th, 8th. Yeah. Par 4s and of the length might be a pretty big factor, at least if 2021 is any indication. So that'll be something to look at tomorrow in the data dive. Let's look at the par 5. Again, par 5s seemingly fairly important. The length of the par 5s, 550 to 600, maybe. Definitely have to take advantage of the par 5s, though. I mean, I think Answer really took advantage of the par 4s, and that's where he made up being bad on the par 5s. Yeah, he led the field in the par 4s, so okay, that makes sense. So when you lead in par 4s, you can maybe get away with a little bit of bad par 5, but everybody else was really darn good on the par 5s last year. Makes a lot of sense. Let's look at proximity. Interesting. Let's see if there's any proximities that come into play here. Because if you remember, the two biggest approach shot distribution ranges were 100 to 125, and then 125 to 150, and a little bit on the 200. And it looks like other than a couple of guys that were pretty bad, there's a lot of green here in this 200. Interesting. So maybe that's something to look at. Let's check 2020. Just real quick. 2020, proximity. Okay, a lot less correlation there. That year it was 175 to 200, it looks like. Okay, so you got a little bit here on the 125 to 150. Let's check 2019 very quickly. Proximity. 200 still coming in. Less on the 125 to 150, so not a lot of consistency here. I don't like that. Let's go back to last year's. Just kind of looks like proximity total, and that makes sense just because of the large greens. That you need to give yourself some chances. Looks like just total proximity to be honest with you. There's 90.5 up here for Answer, coming all the way down. These two are the only other ones that are less than triple digits. Oh, I'm sorry, no, Siwoo here at 50, which is surprising considering we focused on how bad he was on his approach shots that week. He was still, positive relative to the field in proximity. That's saying something. Wow. So yeah, it looks like proximity is a pretty big indicator, just total proximity. Not exciting, nothing, astronomical or earth-shattering there. Just looks like total proximity looks to be a pretty big indicator. I'll check 2020 just to see. A little bit less so, but I mean, again, these high numbers, these are all triple digits. I mean, to get to someone who is, double digits positive, you had to come all the way down to tied for 29th before you reach somebody that was, double digit positive on the leaderboard. Because you got some, negative, double digit negative. Denny McCarthy was really, really bad. And still made it up, into the top 10. I imagine it was probably because of putting. He's just a very good putter. But you see here all the triple number positives in the total proximity. 2019, yeah. Denny McCarthy here, tied for 15th, but other than that, you've got Maldonado here at 23, but you got some very, very high triple digit proximities. So looks like that's just, that looks like it's something that we're going to have to want to look at. It's just total proximity. Let's come back to 2021. Last thing we're going to look at is putting from last year. Nothing astronomical here. Nothing that strongly correlates. 0 to 5 feet. I don't know if that's anything to really want to hammer in or focus in on. Maybe if it's really consistent over the years, but yeah, there's just nothing here. I think it's just we're going to look at fast bent greens and putting. I think that's what we're going to do here for that. So now that we have a general gist of some of the stats that we want to look at, let's look at some fast bent greens. It's one of the easiest things we can filter here on Fantasy National. Just kind of get a quick gauge on fast bent greens in the last 6 months. You've got Troy Merritt as number 1, Seamus Power, Sam Ryder. They're all tied for number 1. Merritt, Power, and Sam Ryder. Then Snedeker is 4th. Adam Hadwin, Zach Johnson, and Pat Perez are all technically tied for 5th. Sorry, I get something to drink. So you got a lot there on the fast bent greens. Answer and Tringali and Cam Davis round out the top 10. There's Ricky at 16th, tied for 16th. Trying to see. There's Ian Poulter who's played one of the comp courses fairly well. Nothing too astronomical. Let's check real quick. Strokes gained easy on strokes gained total on easy courses. No surprise, Sam Burns number 1. So maybe this is including today's data from CC of Jackson. I don't know. Sam Burns, Seamus Power, who won the Barbasol. That's a very easy course. Scott Stallings, Harris English, and Sung Jae. Followed by Van Rooyen, Hagee, Bramlett, Kazire, and Stewart. Interesting. Okay. Kazire really let me down. I was really, really hammering Kazire. I would have had a very, very successful DFS day, but Kazire, or successful weekend, but Kazire kind of threw that out the window, or else I'd have had a lot of high finishes. So there's a quick look at strokes gained total for easy. I think I'm just going to keep it at those two things for now. As I mentioned, I teased that I put this in an Excel spreadsheet. Let me bring that up and then change my focus here as I switch from web pages to Microsoft Excel. So again, I brought in all the statistics, or at least the overhead statistics, total, off the tee, approach, around the green, putting, for those two comparison courses. And let's see if we can find guys who played both of them well. And then, I'll have to, in fact, let me do that. I'll bring this over on the other, on this other side here, where these guys fall in this specific tournament. So, let me make sure I've got that up here. Bring that up. There we go. All right, so just kind of going through the list. I'm just kind of going to look at across. So first person I see, Abraham Answer. He's been 19th strokes gained total at the Houston, 16th at the Charles Schwab. When you look at the Shriners, he is roughly about 10th. So clearly, Abraham Answer likes something about these style of courses: the length, the Bermuda rough, the bent greens. My guess is it's going to be the bent greens. Being 45th and 27th, kind of likes being on the bent green surface. He's pretty darn good off the tee on these short courses, which makes sense because Abraham Answer isn't the longest player on tour. Okay, something to take a look at there. Let's see, you got 33rd and 23rd. Andrew Putnam. Putnam has played the Shriners, tied for 58th in strokes gained total. Okay. A lot of that is always in putting. Andrew Putnam's always known as a good putter. His approach is very good at these two places. So, interesting to see there. Brendan Todd, very good putter in his own right. So you see 5th and 24th on these fast surfaces here. 31st and 29th strokes gained total. Todd and back-to-back, Brendan Todd and Brian Gay play these comparison courses pretty well. Let's see where those guys are here. Todd at the Shriners, pretty bad. The one time he's played it, he missed the cut. Again, was it a bad week? Perhaps. But we only have one round to go on in the past 5, and he missed the cut. Whereas Brian Gay is positive. He's 3 for 5 in making the cut. He had a top 10 in 2020, but he's barely positive. So there's not a lot there. So far, it's Abraham Answer who's the direct correlation. I don't want to go through every single guy. I just kind of want to see if anyone really jumps out. So somebody that I mentioned, Charlie Hoffman, he's played these two comparison courses very well. But you remember he was 4th or 5th to last in strokes gained total at the Shriners. For whatever reason, he just doesn't play the Shriners very well. 4th to last. He does have a top 20 here, but he's missed the cut twice, and he's had a very, very poor made the cut finish. So, maybe this is a little different now that he's playing some very, very good golf. You see here off the tee, he loves it on both of those courses. The approach has been very good. So, looks like at the Charles Schwab he doesn't like around the green. So maybe that's something to look at. But Charlie Hoffman's somebody I might want to take a look at, depending on odds and DFS, all that stuff. Somebody else that I really kind of looked in on earlier tonight when I was doing this research, Chesson Hadley. Chesson Hadley, made the cut here at the Sanderson Farms. He is number 4 strokes gained total at the Shriners, and you can see that the success on the two comparison courses. Good putter. For whatever reason, his approaches have been solid at the two comparison courses. So there's a lot to like here with Chesson Hadley. So Answer and Hadley, for sure, two guys that are kind of on my watch list. Emiliano Grillo we looked at, top 10 in both comparison courses. He's technically positive here. Harris English, very, very good, and very, very good at the Shriners. Where'd he go? Yeah, he's, top 20 strokes gained total at the Shriners. So there's another one. Ian Poulter. He is... I don't see him very high. Oh, that's why. He has never played the Shriners. So that's somebody that, you can put that narrative however you want. He plays the two comparison courses well, therefore, in theory he should play this one well. Or, he's never been at this course, maybe he's, has to get used to it, he doesn't play well. I tend to think it's the former, especially since we've seen some pretty strong correlation with Grillo and Chesson Hadley and Abraham Answer up the top. So Poulter's another one. Streelman, who's fairly good at both. Tway's fairly good at both. Again, I don't want to go through every single guy. Lucas Glover is good at both, and he's tied for second strokes gained total here at the Shriners. So that one is certainly somebody to look at. Kuchar, Maverick McNeely, top 20 on both. All right, now I'm curious. Now I got to see Maverick McNeely. How does he do at the Shriners? He has not been good at the Shriners. Missed the cut twice, and a very middling, tied for 37th the other time he played it. So, for whatever reason, he doesn't like the Shriners all that much. Ricky, second and 47th. He plays pretty darn well at the Shriners, typically. Hindley's pretty good here at the Shriners. Russell Knox. I saw him. Now I'm going to have to type him. I thought I saw him. Russell Knox. A little bit under, a little bit negative. He's made the cut twice, missed it once. Mediocre performances. Scott Piercy, 28th and 33rd. Interesting. Piercy. Okay. Tied for 19th total. That's pretty darn good. So Scott Piercy's another name there. Another name there to look at. Taylor Gooch. Stuart Sink, 11th and 18th. I can tell you that the Shriners is not nearly as positive. About middle of the road. So, yep. Again, I just wanted to. I was intrigued, so I brought this over. I just kind of wanted to match up things to see how guys fare at these comparison courses. Let's see. Do remember the Houston Open, we were more looking at approach and around the green play. The approach being the length of the course, around the green being that Bermuda rough. Whereas the Charles Schwab, we were looking at off the tee because of the length of the course, and then the putting because of the fast bent greens. So perhaps tomorrow I can do a little bit of data manipulation, if you will, and try to combine these two with those two and see if we can't get some kind of either formula or ranking system or something to that effect. But I think that's going to be close to wrapping up the initial research show. Make sure I'm not missing anything in chat here. Guys, reach out on social media. Again, links to my social media in the description. What are you looking for in the data dive? Do you have any early leans or fades, guys who you think might play well or not play well? Do you want to see more of this kind of data mining is the technical term on like comparison courses and such? So with that, like I said, this is going to wrap up the initial research for this week at TPC Summerlin, the Shriners. Hopefully you had a successful week, DFS and Sportsbook. Because with that, for any bets made tonight, this week, and any week, may all your bets be profitable.